This week's past week's reading was 1 Kings 19 through 2 Kings chapter 5. So looking at these readings, we're going through this time in Israel's history where there are different kings. The kingdom is divided, the north and the south, the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judah. The king that we keep hearing about the most in these readings is Ahab, evil King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. And the prophet that we hear the most about is Elijah. So this is the king and this is the prophet that lived during the same time. But I want to focus on chapter 2 of 2 Kings, where it talks about Elijah being taken up into heaven. So it's this time of transition from Elijah as prophet to now Elisha, similar name, a little different, Elisha as prophet. So in chapter 2, we see here this account where Elijah and Elisha are traveling together. And it seems as though Elijah knows that his time is up, that his end is near. And so they travel together. And as they travel, Elijah asks Elisha these words in verse 9. Ask what shall be done for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. Let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. So he's asking kind of in terms of someone who would receive an inheritance, that the firstborn son perhaps would receive a double portion compared to the other children. And so that's what Elisha's asking for, a double portion of Elijah's spirit. And then Elijah really leaves the answer to that up to God. He says, what you've asked for is a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I'm being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so. So it's in God's hands whether or not Elisha sees Elijah being taken up. They continue on, and then, behold, it says, chariots of fire and horses of fire separate the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and the horsemen of Israel. And then he saw him no more. So this chariot of fire comes, and then this whirlwind is actually what takes Elijah up into heaven. Elisha sees it happens, and he receives that double portion of Elijah's spirit. His cloak falls, and Elisha takes it with him. So I think some things to be learned here from this account. One of them is certainly that Elijah doesn't die. That's kind of an interesting thing. Elijah doesn't die. He's taken up into heaven. He doesn't have to taste death. Sort of like a foretaste, I suppose, of the resurrection. When Jesus returns, for those who are on earth, they won't need to taste death, but they'll be taken up into heaven. Also, I think another thing to be learned is that passing on of the important job of serving as prophet, and maybe we can extend that even today to serving as pastor, workers within the Lord's church. It is so important for the next generation to take up the task of sharing the gospel with others. Professional church workers like DCEs and teachers and principals and missionaries and church musicians and pastors as well. It's so very important. Church workers are needed in our church body now. And so if you're a youth, if you're a child, if you know someone who'd be well suited for the ministry, encourage them to at least prayerfully consider that. There's a hymn in our hymn book, a Lutheran service book, a hymn for ordination and installation. It's sung a lot of times when a pastor is installed at a new church. And the first verse of the hymn picks up on this account where Elijah is taken up into heaven. Here's what it says, and it's written as a prayer. God of the prophets, bless the prophets' sons. Elijah's mantle or Elisha cast. Each age its solemn task may claim but once. Make each one nobler, stronger than the last. Each generation has the job of sharing the gospel. Big job. Can only have it once. Now is our time. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, it's your time to share the gospel and to pass it on so that future generations may share Christ with others as well. May God grant that in all vocations, but especially among pastors and workers within his church. Take care. Thanks for watching.